I see this as a fundamental gap in how we think about space because in reality, what we're doing is we're building these spaces and then we walk away from them. We've got no idea how they perform in a real world scenario because there's no system of recording the data and analyzing the data. So you get some like BMS data, you get some IoT, sort of smart building data, but the people that are looking at that are not the ones that designed it. So they don't know what impact their design interventions have had on the output. So for me, the big missing piece there is almost like a retainer consultancy where you understand that the things that you did, what are they actually doing? Did it work? And you can't do that until a little bit further down the line because in most projects, the first 6 months you can call it a honeymoon period. It's still adapting, and then after that it changes again. So in my mind, it's more about thinking about, okay, what are smart buildings? Smart buildings are data. So who reviews the data? Is it the FM companies, or is it the FM companies and the design consultants who were there at the start who made the decisions? Otherwise, there's a knowledge gap happening right now. So IO, basically the idea was to, how do I describe what we do? And what we're doing is we're blending an AI business with a design business. So IO was to reflect that sort of data component, binary data, and Atelier is sort of a house of artisans. So it's the blend of those two worlds. For me, it's more about saying, if we continue down the road we continue, which is an erosion of fees, and an erosion of respect from our clients about what we do, we have to change what it is. There's been a cycle, for many years, on clients not really valuing maybe what the consultants do. Not everybody, but certainly some. So the idea is we're in a position now where we can fundamentally change how we work, and the solutions we provide can be way more sophisticated than maybe they were, and we can start earning back that respect. I think that we're more than just creating pretty images. We're doing something really, really valuable. So that was the sort of idea behind that, and it's more about that shift. It's happening. It's going to happen across industries, whether it's law firms, accountants, any office-based job. Um, Everything's going to be changed. So like that's what I'm thinking about when I talk about it. It's more, we have to do more than just design. So my teams are a blend. There's people with architecture, sort of structural engineering, data science, machine learning, UX, UI. So that you have these blended teams, and I think in my mind, and this is actually across the board, actually, businesses are going to change their makeup in terms of their staff and their blend. So we won't just have a bunch of interior designers and architects. You're going to have this full blend across what you do. So with that, you're producing more information, you do more interesting things, and you can bring more value to the clients. So I think that's what we should be talking about. It's value that we bring, not just output. What we did right at the start, I broke down everything that we do as a business, from my background of doing business before, of doing design. So you're breaking down workflows. You can, okay, well, is there a bit of technology that exists that we can test? And if it's good, we should incorporate it and use it for our benefit. If it doesn't exist, we should think about building it. If we build it, how long will it take, and what will the value be if we do that? So you're really thinking about it in a sort of systems automation way. And then we really ended up focusing on more on that front end because we realized for us it was about sort of creativity still, not process and drawing packages, because we knew Autodesk are going to ultimately do that, and they're already heading in that direction. They're already doing deals and M&A, and they will own the drawing production side using generative design. So that's where we focused on, and it was about how do we really improve what we do. And the feedback from the clients actually is it's about speed for them, and for us, it's how can we deliver the same quality as anybody else, but how can we do it in half the time? And that's what they really care about. I had a client the other day say, the fees are somewhat irrelevant to them, because what they really want to do is they want to compress the program, not just of design, but the whole end to end for them from the moment they conceptualize a project to when it's handed over. That can take it can take years. So how can you reduce that down? And then ultimately, the design fees are just a small percentage of that sort of capex and opex. So it's about time. I think AI is about how do you be more productive? How do you do more for less? How do you speed up the process? And I think that's what people are really looking for going forward. We are able to control generative design. So that's the simplest way to say it. I think obviously there's platforms. You've got Nano Banana and you had Mid Journey, you had all these things, but they weren't very controllable. It was sort of AI slop. You can generate things and it looks pretty, but it has a meaning behind it. It's just an image, and you can't repeat it. So that's the problem. If you can't repeat it, you can't control it. So what we've done is we've controlled that process. So we can do things where, honestly, it gets to the point where we don't need to use CGI artists. We're sort of moving away from that. We don't need to model things in the same way that we did. We can show clients what they're thinking and what we're thinking in the room with them. We don't have to go away. We can say literally, we will show you right now what this is going to look like. So to have a decision maker and be able to show them what we're thinking in the room, they can comment and we can change it in the room with them. That's the real breakthrough for us, I think. The workplace strategy is really about data anyway. It's sort of you're trying to understand how a business works. You're trying to capture as much data as they have so that you can play it back to them and sort of understand it. And what we're saying now to clients is give us any data you have. Like, just don't worry about what it is. It could be the BMS data. It could be your staff survey data. We can generate reports and sort of surveys for your staff as well. All of your smart building data, just any data, you can give it to us. And we have data scientists. So we can analyze that data and put it into dashboards and make sense of it, do predictive analysis on it. It's things that we, as designers, we didn't really know how to do that. But when you have data scientists, they're thinking in different ways. So the final bridge for that is having the connection in the end, creating a loop. So rather than just doing that front end, data analysis and review, what you really want to do is that you want to basically then capture what happens with the data afterwards, and then feed that back. So you're creating this sort of circular system of data, design intervention, and you're starting to understand how people use space at that point. You're not guessing. One of the projects, it was a law firm, and when you ask your staff how many days in the week are you in the office, um, nobody's going to say two, because it doesn't feel good to say two, because they think we're meant to be in 3 days a week. So everybody says 3 or 4 days a week, which is fine. When we did the review of the data, so we looked at heat spotting data from Wi-Fi connectivity to different access control data. We looked at all of it, and we could show quite clearly that the average was 2 days a week. So the decision for the client really is about, well, do you accept the real data? Because if you use the wrong data, you're making a decision for the next 5, potentially 10 years of taking a certain amount of space in a new building, which you might not, where you don't need it. So you got options there. One is you enforce your days in the office, or you accept that they just don't do it, but you need to make a decision. So I think that that's a good example of using data to really make hard decisions based on fact, not on emotion. It's about how people use space, I think. Obviously, you can do regular surveys. You can analyze that pattern of data as well. So you can do that. But I think what's missing, and what we like to do is we go, okay, we anticipated these areas to be fully occupied because we modeled it. We had an idea that we all think is going to work. So these areas we expect to be busy at these times. We expect people to use it in a certain way. So, and that's what we design. What you need to do then afterwards is start reviewing it. So you look at the data and go, okay, something's not right there. That's not what we expected. And then you have to go and visually review it. So you go there and you visually sit there and spend some time and watching what people are doing, because you're trying to understand why they're not using it in the way that they meant to use it. Or even more weirdly sometimes, imagine you have 2 floors or 3 floors and you have the same arrangement on the different floors. Why has it been used on different floors in different ways when the arrangement is the same? Because again, that doesn't make sense. You can't really tell from the data what's happening. You have to go and visually understand it. So it's a mix of, it's eyes on and it's and reviewing data and you're comparing the two things. And it might be something that you can't really fix for that project, but at least you know for the next project, that's how people are really using something. So it's that blend. It's not all about data and AI. It's definitely human in the loop as well. Speed. I mean, it's as simple as saying speed. I used to, I've worked in design and build before. I've worked in traditional before, and when you were describing the benefits, the pros and cons of each, you would say, okay, well, design and build, you can sort of get time, you can get cost certainty, but the quality is, not too sure because but that's the risk you take in that methodology. In traditional, you get the quality, and you will get sort of the assurance on cost because you're firming it up, but the programs are going to be longer, because that's the risk of doing it that way. And I think what we're saying now is with AI, you can sort of have the best of both worlds. If you can bring AI into it, you're getting back time. And then for the clients, what we say to them is the time that we're going to give back to you, you can either go and move in earlier, or you can basically lease the space earlier, or you can sell it, or or rent it, whatever the type of project it is, you can do that. So that's what you get back, or you can just de-risk your project, spend more time on procurement and more time on construction for quality. But I think everybody's thinking about speed. How can we do things quicker? Certain things we can't do quicker right now. We haven't got robots building projects. That's maybe that's 50 years away, but it's not something we need to worry about right now. But the things that we can compress are the design stages, the sort of the finding of the building stages. All that sort of stuff can be reduced down. So I think that's all clients care about. They expect design to be good. They expect a high level of design. They expect compliance and all the regulations to be checked and done. But if you can do that at speed, then that's what they want to see. We're not giving them more options. You're just giving them the ability to see exactly what you think. So the traditional way is you basically go and do a presentation. You present what you think the client's going to like, because obviously you're trying your best. And then the client goes, I like it, but it's something missing. Or can you try this? Or can you do that? Which is they're right because they're the clients. And then what you do is you go, okay, I'm going to go away, and then let's come back next week, and I'll represent. Um, and then the client might go, I still don't like it. So you've got this weird process where you sort of, you're just repeating it. So imagine that another way where you go, okay, here's our presentation, and then the client goes, can you can we change it? Can we? I like something else. He said, yeah, we'll do it now, like in front of you. We'll change it, and we'll tweak it, and we'll. So you're basically having a more collaborative approach and relationship with your clients, and you're engaging them. So then you sort of walk away from that meeting, you're pretty sure what they want at that point. You've extracted that information out of them. So you've just compressed those weeks into a couple of hours in the afternoon, simply because you don't have to go away and do it back in the studio. You can do it with them when you have them in the room when they're engaged, and that's the benefit. I think of AI as a tool. It's a force multiplier. That's the way we think of it. So you're leveraging your ability, and then you're going to do so much more with it, so much quicker. And what we've really now discovered, not realized, is that actually the best designers using the best tools produce the best output. If you're an average designer, your output is still going to be average. It's going to look average. And the reason being is that the best designer, when they start the process, they know in their head what this is going to look like. They can visualize it conceptually in their brain. So they're aiming for an output which they are clear about. And if a designer is not that great, they're a bit muddled, they're not quite sure about what it is, their output is going to be just the best that they can imagine. The AI is not going to imagine something better. It's just going to help them get there quicker. So I think that's, in my mind, what we're going to see in the industry is a, a focus on talent. So if you need the best designers, the truly best designers, And not everybody's a great designer. I wasn't a great designer. I knew that. So and I'm comfortable with that. And that's why I don't really do design. And I recruit really great designers. But I think, in our industry, in writing, there'll be good books and there'll be bad books. There'll be some slop there as well. But I think if you're a truly great writer, you're always going to be fine with AI because you think very differently. There'll always be another Quentin Tarantino making movies who's nobody's ever imagined it before, and it comes out of nowhere. You will always get that. The physics one's an interesting one. When we talk about AI models, I think a lot of people are coming out of uni right now, and they're doing sort of elements of machine learning. So they're adding components to their masters where they've got machine learning in it because they're smart kids and they all know that they should be doing this, so they're all doing it. What you sort of discover is actually to truly understand what AI is doing, rather than just using AI, you sort of have to have a bit more of a technical knowledge. So what we've really come to the conclusion is you sort of need to have a math or physics or computational sciences background to truly understand AI in its real form. Like when you lift up the sheets and see how it works, you need a bit more of a technical understanding to do that. So that's why we have these mixed groups doing different things. And it's just so refreshing to come in the morning and speak to people with diverse backgrounds because you don't know what you don't know. You do your job and you've been working with people of a certain background for so many years, and then somebody over your shoulder goes, "Yeah, why are you doing it that way? That's crazy. Do it this way." And it's just because you haven't been a sort of emerged in their world. But it's vice versa as well. Some of these people who are more on our sort of UX, UI, or they're more on the sort of the heavy data science, they haven't got any design background. So, they're learning something as well about sort of how people interact with space and how people think and sort of, uh, it's completely new for them. They've been stuck working with people who are just doing coding. So I think the blending of worlds is what's really interesting. Economics, I mean, basically it's analytical. See, it's analyzing patterns, it's analyzing data, it's analyzing, how we think things are going to perform, looking at models of, build costs. It's basically just, I would love a world where we could have lots of other types of disciplines there as well. Have somebody who's a writer would be fantastic. Have somebody who's got like I don't know, a chemical engineering background. For me, it's just having really smart people all together can do really amazing things. The big thing that we've changed, I guess, is we call them AI architects. So we have a team where they have got a traditional design background, but they've also are extremely well versed in AI tools and programming, so that they sort of cross that two worlds. And then we have on the other extreme, we have the ones who are pure, mathematical data sciences and stuff like that, and they support. But there's only ones that cross over. But I think we're going to have more of those AI architects going forward, where they do both, and I think that's really the future. And then even some of our senior design talents, they're using it all the time. They're just we're teaching them how to use it. They're using it, so they're engaging, they're pushing boundaries, trying new things. But you just need to have the people to support them to allow them to do that. Otherwise, it's you're just relying on somebody else's product, right now it's the what I would say is the products on the market are very they're very generic and they're wonderful, but they're not specialized. So I think we're moving now towards specialization in sectors. You get the specialized LLMs, large language models in law right now. I think there's Harvey and there's Legora. So they're specializing just in law, and we're going to start similar things happening in different industries. I think there's more data in the UK right now. I think it's much easier to get hold of a lot of data, just because it's there. It's more difficult actually to get it in Saudi and GCC. I think it's a transparency thing sometimes. Again, once you go into Asia, there's a lot of data in Asia as well, but maybe you can't get hold of it. So London's definitely like the R&D test bed, I would say, for what we're doing. But then on the sort of I guess like, even on the sort of the behavioral stuff, trying to get behavioral data out of companies in Saudi, or UAE is not as easy. I think people are quite nervous about that sort of stuff still. So it's more like we're building the architecture, not in the traditional architecture sense, but we're building the systems, and we're building the sort of the brain that goes with it, and then the memory, which is the data essentially. It can change out. You can replace it with different data once it's available. You can do synthetic data. So you can, if you've got examples of data from a couple of locations, you can sort of synthesize that, and then you could do synthetic data and synthetic analysis as well. So that's something that's possible. Basically, you can make personas, and then you can sort of run it as tests, essentially, if you haven't got the actual data. I think that the Middle East is because the way that they're ruled, they can make changes very quickly. So they could make a change where they basically say, businesses have to be shown their use cases in AI, and they could do it from a very top-down approach. So whereas in established sort of Western markets, things don't work that quickly. They're quite slow. So my take is on Saudi and the UAE, and they really need to focus on keeping the best talents in the country, and giving them the environments to thrive and do innovative thinking and build innovative products, but keeping them in the country rather than them all going to the US or going like India has the same problem. A lot of their talents going to the US or goes to the UK. So I think they need to build an ecosystem of companies which are thinking like this, because right now they're not. There's a risk that it becomes an import business where they import in this technology and talents rather than having it homegrown. And I think that would be a shame if that happened. It's all about output. So, I mean, I think in my mind, the design industry is going to split in two. You're going to have the ones who lean very much into AI, like what we're doing, and then you're going to have other firms who are the opposite of that. They will have zero AI. Everything will be done by hand. Everything will be done by craftspeople and artisans, and it'll be, the traditional way. And I think a client will then have a choice of which way to go based on what they want. And some clients will just go, I don't want AI. I want to engage with somebody. I want to design my project with them, and I want to know that individual. And there'll be a place for that. I think the problem is for the ones in the middle who don't choose, you're sort of stuck between two worlds. I think you can either do one or the other. You can't be in the middle.